Everyone. No, I was gonna. Should I say something?
All right, guys, we're getting back to it.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. Okay. Is the recording? Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and continue because it doesn't seem like it's an active threat at the moment. So.
All right, guys, we're gonna continue.
All right, what was the question? Sunil, you were about to answer. Sunil was about to answer why he decided to go to graduate school.
Yeah. Okay. What is it? Yeah. Okay. So why did I decide to join graduate school? So yeah, I was saying like there was like a bunch of decisions I had to make. And the first decision was between choosing graduate school in Nepal versus choosing it here. So obviously I chose I at least tried here. And even here, I had an option to choose between PhD or master's. And it just seemed silly not to apply for PhD because I was interested in learning. So that's the reason.
Okay, David, do you have?
Yeah, so Jack is asking, thank you guys for being here. I would like to know the learning environment at this department from a student perspective.
Okay, if you didn't hear what he said, he was asking if we could share what the learning environment here is from a student perspective. So who would like to? All right.
So the learning environment, so we're a pretty small program. So usually you get to know pretty much everyone, especially in like your cohort coming into it. There's usually like 10 or so students, and you usually get to know your classmates pretty well. And because your classes are small, you also know your professors pretty well. So in terms of how you learn in that environment, you learn a lot from talking to the other students and also talking to professors. So that's been something that's been really valuable, I think, is that you actually get to know each other a little better, and you're never just like a number in a class, I guess.
So for a mildly different perspective, and it's still a positive one, but I came back to graduate school after being about 15 years removed from higher education. And so there was a lot of catch up I had to do of just getting back into that frame of mind. And one thing I've had a lot of luck with at this institution is that the faculty is very open with their office hours. You stop in, you ask your questions, they take the time to explain things to you. You get the feeling that they actually want you to succeed at what you're doing. And so it's extremely useful when you're tackling these topics, and you may not have any familiarity with them to begin.
I can go next. So to be honest, it's two different environments at the beginning of your PhD and then after you become a PhD candidate. So the environment is very much at the beginning similar to undergraduate. You have classes, so you talk with students, you have homework, study sessions, all that type of thing. As well as you working with your advisor on your research at the same time. Once you become a candidate, for me, it was now just focused on my colleagues, so working within my research lab, so learning from them, but also a lot of self-learning as well related to my research topic. So exploring papers, very much, once you're on that point, you are kind of researching a lot on your own.
I want to add something than what already people have said here. That is, as Anna have said, you are not just a number here. And everyone comes from different backgrounds with different strengths and weaknesses. And what I've noticed here as a student and as a project manager in some of the courses is that the professors will actually try to help you succeed. They don't try to set you up for failure. So the learning environment here is very good for you because they will try to help you learn as much as possible. The learning part, of course, is always up to you, but they will try to help you as much as possible from their side so that you can succeed. And as it's a small community, you get to know other people, you get to work with your peers and other people. so that you can learn from all of them together.
I have a small thing to add. I think one strength for me in the William Mary CS program is that in the first 2 years when you're taking classes, it has a slightly more focus on the research part. Says like it prepares you with the essential techniques and knowledge you have to use in the later years, no matter you're going to the industry or working on research projects later, because that's kind of the creativity ways of doing things and creative ways of thinking.
All right, any questions from the audience? Okay. Yes.
So you as graduate students, let's say, what is the worst part from being a graduate student? And what's the best part? What's the like?
So our lovely department chair has asked what the worst part of being a graduate student is, and subsequently what the best part of being a graduate student is. I will pass the mic off to. I'll take this. Okay.
What's the hardest part?
For me, because I just graduated, the big change is that I moved from a very tiny house, a tiny apartment, to a bigger house. So that's my main change. And I also encourage everyone to graduate as soon as possible. So that's kind of the, not saying the worst part, but also kind of, I would say in the PhD time, you have to, your pay salary is not as good as full-time faculty or engineers, but you're dedicating enough, the same amount of time into your research. And actually the most torturing part in the PhD time is paper rejections, because you more or less you will get paper rejections, and that thing will add a lot of mental pressure to the students. I get that a lot in my PhD time, but thanks to my advisor, who's a lovely chair now, and to my colleagues, to my collaborators, I managed to survive from there. Oh, a good part. Good part. As I said, everyone's lovely. Everyone's giving so many support. So that's why I graduated.
I guess something that can be very hard is figuring out what exactly you want your research area to be. I think it's easy to come in and say, I think I want to do this, or I think I want to do that, or I don't know what I want to do at all. But I think it can be hard to figure out like specifically what it is that you want to do, where you want to go with that idea. That can be a hard thing to conquer, I guess, and to figure out how to focus on that. And also the paper rejections are hard. Something that's good is I think we definitely have a very good community here. And there are a lot of people that you can talk to, a lot of ways that you can get help with things. Yeah, in general, I think the people are great.
So the hardest part for me was just finding a balance. Besides just, your life as a PhD student, you also have life outside of the school. So balancing all of the responsibilities and all of the hardships and stuff with actual schooling can be challenging at times. And so finding a good system for you is important so that you don't burn out, so that you are able to complete your PhD. A very good thing is the community is here to support you in every step of the way, from lab members to your advisor to friends and the rest of the student body. Very important.
I'm just gonna go ahead and pass on. Nothing new.
Okay. I think the worst part was like in the beginning, getting out of the comfort zone. So suddenly you're here and you have to manage all of those things and also the rejections. So that hit hard. But overall, that was also a good part because it put me in a state where like I learned how to tackle those things. So that was new for me. So being here, I was able to like process and learn from those experiences, which I think is great.
I did want to add one thing. The hardest part for me is I find that a lot of times I look around to my peers and I think they're so much better than I am. They're so much smarter. They're doing so much more. But then you talk to them and they always say, I feel the exact same way you do. And I think that's been both the best part and the worst part for me. But I do agree that the community here is really good. Everyone seems to kind of know each other and get along pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, when you get your welcome packet, they actually send you the paperwork to describe the imposter syndrome that comes with it. So don't worry, it's covered.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Thank you for using the microphone.
Is there no mic here? Oh, I thought
There is.
there is. Okay. Hello. I'm Joseph. I'm an undergraduate here at William Mary. So I sort of had a question about like the research process. So obviously, I would assume when you guys start, right, it kind of starts off with like a literature review, right, trying to develop like an expertise, trying to develop some sort of expertise in like whichever research area you're working on. But I feel like the hardest part of that research process is really coming up with new ideas, right? How do you get creative, or like how do you innovate in like a certain area? So I'm just wondering, like, I know this is the answer depends on whichever specific research area you're interested in, but I'm just wondering, like, what are the broader takeaways and like trying to, I guess, approach like coming up with new ideas, and like how have you worked with, in your experience, how have you worked with your advisor to be able to accomplish that? Thank you.
I think that's a fantastic question.
I have a story about Dr. Gang Zhou and my advisor. Because in my first year in PhD, I was taking Dr. Gang's class. He asked every one of us to generate with our own idea for the course project. And it has to have some novelty, has some significance of improving the research area. But I was thought like, if I can generate the new idea, why do I come to the PhD program? So then, but finally, Dr. Zhou helped us because I was teamed up with another PhD student. Then we three sit down and brainstorming, I think for maybe 1 or 2 whole afternoon. Then we come up with some nice ideas. So then that's one story about initially my thoughts on the new ideas. Then I asked my advisor the same question. Actually, her answer also makes sense to me. In that specific research area for system research, in system research, you don't look for ideas. Ideas come to you. It's like you work every day, you understand the system, you talk to the system, then the ideas will come to you naturally. So just to keep on working on it. Finally, if you have plenty of ideas, that's the time for you to graduate.
All right, just to make sure I understand your question right, it's about how to figure out research questions or how to get familiar with the research process, right? So the question is more about how to figure out research questions or what to research on.
You have that research question, and then like trying to like really the idea, like coming up with the hypothesis.
Okay, so there are 2 principles I personally follow, which I kind of inherited from other researchers. One is by a famous researcher whose name I forgot, but he has a quote, something like, research is done with a shovel, not with a tweezer. So you have to dig around a lot and be comprehensive when you are trying to find answers to your questions. Because you cannot be selective when you are trying to figure out that question, what the answer is like. And you have to be comprehensive because otherwise you don't know what you're missing. And the other one is to study a lot, because when you study different topics, not just in your field, but in other fields, you get to learn about the different types of techniques, what people have thought about, different types of techniques that they have used. In essence, you are gathering more and more tools in your arsenal, which is like kind of like a gathering a lot of dots, which you can later on connect together to build your solution or go to your answer of the question. I hope that helps.
I guess for me, for the first project that I started working on, it was an idea that someone else in our group had already sort of come up with and hadn't really fleshed out on. And then it was sort of passed on to me in order to figure out what questions I wanted to ask about this, how I wanted to go about looking into those questions. So the initial like seed of inspiration was something that I was sort of brought in on, and then I could do with that what I wanted to, basically what I thought was interesting. In terms of how you figure out how to research what you think is interesting, I think a good way to do that is to, I guess, read a lot of related papers, and you can see how other people do things, see how other people in your group are doing things, even if it might not be the same project. And that will give you some idea of how to go about fleshing out an idea once you have one.
So my advisor shared with me that there's usually two different processes when you're trying to develop your research goals, your dissertation. You can plan exactly the sort of research that you want, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. But in general, this is an extremely hard thing to do. It's predicting the future, basically, because you don't know if any of them are going to turn out. And then there's the ad hoc approach, where you just try as many things as possible. And then for the dissertation, you make it all pretty and look like it made sense at the beginning. And in terms of coming up with ideas that are novel and stuff, I think the important thing there is to just come up with a lot of crappy ideas until one of them is less crappy than the others. And that's the one that you then look at Google Scholar to see if someone else has found. Usually they have. And so a lot of the good ideas have already been taken, sadly. So you just keep doing that process, and reading a bunch of papers does help with coming up with ideas. But yeah, just lots of ideas until one of them's not taken and it's not crappy.
So one of the more common assignments you're going to run into is paper reviews and paper presentations, which are a great way of learning, hey, here's what they did. And then you start reading these other papers. Well, these are what these other folks did. And then you start being able to notice the gaps, right? Like, hey, they did this, but they didn't try this part. And those are just all openings for research, right? I've got an idea. It hasn't been tried. You, like you said, go check Google Scholar and make sure somebody didn't already write that paper. And that's something you can start with. And I'm not saying that'll be a paper or a research topic all of its own, but it might be an entryway to one. And so there's a lot of different ways to get into it, but the volume of papers alone that you'll be reading will help with that.
Yeah, I think that covers it, but I just want to reiterate that or emphasize that it's a process. So once you know the thing, then you will realize, okay, these things are missing. So at least that's how it worked out for me. So after you gain some experience, you will automatically think of like the missing pieces. And that's how you go about the ideas instead of like worrying about it in the beginning. I think it will just come when you're ready.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to ask a question, and that's how did you come about choosing your research topic or field? Did you come in knowing kind of what you wanted to do, or did you decide after you got here?
So when I came here, even before coming here, I knew Dr. Dennis Poshivonek, and I wanted to solely focus on software engineering research. That's everything I knew at that point, like software engineering research, software engineering research, software engineering research. So one good thing about William and Mary is that for the first 2 years, you get to learn a lot about other faculty members because they are essentially covered by the university, and you can explore a lot of different topics. And I started exploring topics which I can relate with software engineering, and then I realized that I also have interest in cybersecurity, and my background in software engineering research can be utilized to make even better cybersecurity research, which will probably have even greater impact in human lives. So that's how I gravitated towards a combination of both of them.
If I can go. So I said before that one of the hardest things for me was figuring out how to choose what research area I wanted to do. So this is I think a pretty relevant question for that. And for me, when I came in, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was thinking, well, I kind of like algorithms. I kind of like a lot of things. It seems like everything that I learn, it sounds like something really cool, that it sounds like something you could do research in, which is great when it comes to whether or not you're interested in pursuing graduate school, but it makes it hard to choose an area. So for me, it came from in those first 2 years, you can kind of get a feel for taking different classes. You can meet different faculty members, different students, and you can talk about their research areas. So taking the classes was definitely good. And also talking to students and faculty members, because because you need to have a good, I guess, mesh of you have to like the research area, you also have to like your advisor and your research group. And getting all of those things to line up in a way is what really helped me choose it.
So for me, it was, I think, kind of just fell into it. Had a sort of plan that I was going to work on education types research. But I always in the back of my head liked the idea of deep learning and all the fun stuff that was happening. And luckily at the time, that's what my advisor, Dennis, and all of his students were working on. And so I kind of just started working on that and found that I really liked it. So I continue to do it more and more.
It's been mentioned already, but over the course of your classes, you'll get an opportunity to hear your professors talk about their research and what they're into, what their teams are working on. And oddly enough, my first bit of research was actually something that when Nathan was talking a moment ago about, well, you get a lot of ideas and you might not be able to pursue all of them. It was one of the ideas that Nathan had and let us do the research for. And that got me very caught up in the ML software engineering side of things. And I've just got the bug now, so I'm staying here.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, sorry. Yeah, so what was the question? Sorry, I'm totally. Yes. Yeah. So I had a general idea of like what I wanted to do in the beginning. And there were professors, so I did not choose directly like which one. So for the, like Amit mentioned, the first 2 years is for you to explore, and you would take classes for the professors you're interested in, and then try to do a project with them. And that is perfect because you get to interact with the professors and at the same time work on the ideas or work on the projects related to the research you're interested in. And I'm kind of an example here because like I did have a general idea when I came in. I tried to work with different professors, but I worked with like, since I had interest in machine learning and stuff, so I worked with one of the professors, and then I realized security has the applications for all the machine learning techniques. So I switched my like research in the later part of the like in the final semesters, I guess. But William Mary, like in the department, was nice enough for me to make that transition. My advisor was nice enough. My everybody was nice and helped me to make that transition.
Okay. One thing to add is that I didn't come in with a specific research topic in mind. My undergraduate was a computer science and mathematics, and I just knew I wanted some sort of combination of them. But I didn't really care what I researched as long as I enjoyed working with my advisor. I find that to be a little bit more important, not completely, but at least for me. So I actually do want to go ahead and lead into this question. Did y'all come in with a research advisor in mind? And if not, and if so, I guess, how did you come to work with them?
Well, I think this is the answer. My advisor also doesn't know why I choose her. So the reason, first, I come without any advisor. Actually, I applied for master, but then William Mary offered me PhD offer saying, do you want to transfer to PhD directly? I said yes. So I come here without any advisor. I spent my whole first year working with different professors. Either I take them class or I don't take them class, but I directly go to him him or her to work with them. Then, for me, I value mostly two things. First, whether I'm interested in their research, and second, the personality-wise. That also includes where the students, their graduate students go, where the students go after they graduate, because I want to be in academia. So with all that kind of effects, I chose my advisor finally. Is that the question? Yeah. All right.
And I can-
Okay.
It's easy enough. It's following on the last question, and you take a series of courses, you run into professors that you enjoy working with, and then you just kind of decide, hey, this seems like a good working relationship, and I want to work in the research area that this professor is working in. So it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, any questions from the audience or Zoom? There's one from Zoom. Okay.
So they asked about the living costs here in Williamsburg. How do you afford that?
Okay, living cost in Williamsburg is an interesting topic at the moment for me. So the prices have definitely gone up since COVID. And so it does seem to be a little bit harder to find places to live nowadays. And one thing I can say is that the best option is to have a roommate or roommates, plural. I currently live with two people in our graduate program that I met my first year, one being sitting next to me. But yeah, anyone like to say anything? Okay.
I think I'm the best person to answer this question because I'm now with George Mason. So I think both William Mary and George Mason faculties are asking for the salary increase for grad students, and we see the salaries are increasing in William Mary, I think. So I think it's 5% or 7% this year. 7%. Yes. So we are aware of the living cost has been increasing, and we are trying to raise the salary as well. But the things that considering living in Williamsburg and living in Fairfax, which is the Northern Virginia part, here the living cost is around half but the student salary is the same. So if you're just talking about money, William Mary is definitely the place you want to consider. So yeah. And I think I saved some money even just when I was doing PhD. So.
Yeah, as an international student, I can add to that. So definitely living cost has gone up, but you have to consider the different living cost as well. I know people studying in other parts of the USA who are also international students, and depending on the region, they might be having a rather hard time compared to us. Or I would say we are living pretty much comfortably here compared to other people. As a graduate student, you're not supposed to make too much money, but you are supposed to not make too less money either. You can go by with that money. And you will probably need to have a roommate because people will ask you to have a certain amount of money to pay the rent or have a co-signee, which for international students is not possible to have, which is why you need to have a roommate. But I would say living cost in Williamsburg / William and Mary is bearable as a international PhD student here.
Yeah, I have found that it's definitely enough to live off of, and also I have cats, so it's enough for me to take care of myself and my cats. And in addition to that, when I applied to schools and I looked at like my financial aid packages at all of the schools that I applied to, they all offered pretty similar amounts of money. The difference being that it's cheaper to live in Williamsburg than it is to live in, say, New York City, where you would be getting similar stipends. So definitely that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at how much money you would be making, is the cost of living. And the cost of living here is pretty good compared to a lot of like different areas, especially cities.
Yeah, that's actually true. Our stipends have gone up recently, and compared to some other schools, it is pretty higher. And while the cost of living has gone up, it is still manageable. And yeah. And
Just don't live at the grad complex. Don't do it. I know it sounds like a good idea. You know, it's the grad complex, of course, go there. You don't want to stay there. It's not very good. It's very expensive. You're living with 3 other people. You can find another better place. I assure you.
I didn't think we were supposed to say that, but I do agree.
I was not told I couldn't
Yeah.
say anything in particular.
Yes.
I live in Grabplex for the first year. Personally, I think everything's perfect. Just the money, the payment is not perfect. But the is furniture. It has very good kitchen, bathroom. Everything's perfect. Just it's too expensive for grad students.
It has no dishwasher. The fire alarm goes off every week.
Nathan's not allowed to answer anymore. I'm going to move on from this question. Does anyone have? Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit ironic, given the fact that we are, although we are not at the center anymore, so that's what I got. So we don't have to separate this anymore. So can you say something about safety before the
Yes, despite the ironic nature of the question, it's how safe is Williamsburg? Or campus in general, yeah.
So it's a pretty safe area, especially if you're comparing to like cities. It's pretty low crime, and where I live and where I can afford to live is somewhere where it is pretty safe. So I can leave my apartment at night and not be scared. And I can be on campus at night and not be scared, which was something that was important to me when I was applying to graduate schools. So in general, yes, I think we are pretty safe, both in the campus and the surrounding area.
Yeah, so I personally haven't had too many issues. The only issues that I've ever encountered here were on public transport. So it was a little sketchy sometimes with that, people getting randomly into fights on a bus. Also, in terms of depending on if you are not driving or if you're walking or biking, biking is not too bad on campus and such, but it can be a little bit hard once you get off campus. They don't have very large places for you to drive. So it can be a little bit hard sometimes, depending on how far you are from campus to drive. Or sorry, to bike.
All right, so the next question that I have is, what's your biggest piece of advice regarding students who are freshly admitted into the program and are about to start? It can be regarding advisors, regarding classes, anything.
I guess I can start.
Yeah.
I guess one thing is to definitely be mindful of your imposter syndrome, because I think somebody said this already, but it's like you have imposter syndrome, you talk to somebody else, and then you realize that they also are experiencing this as well. So definitely be mindful of that, and just realize that it's a lot of your fellow students are also experiencing these things. So you're not actually an imposter is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
So it's also related to the thing Anna's saying. But my advice is that doing a PhD, it's a long marathon. So you cannot just race at the beginning. You will spend all your energy in your first year. But also you cannot just crawl or lay in bed for your first year. So you have to be continuously hardworking in a reasonable, but not too much and not too less, spending your energy uniformly. It's a uniform distribution kind of across your whole PhD life. That's my suggestion. Don't work too hard. Don't be too lazy.
Yeah, lots of people here are worried about imposter syndrome, I want to welcome them to the faith and belief of brilliant conman syndrome. Basically, you believe that you are a con who is so good that you don't have to break any rules. So are you good at that? I don't know. Am I doing a good job? Maybe. So yes, why worry about being bad or good at all? Just do what you're supposed to do. And for first year students, I think, at least for William and Mary Computer Science department, you should be focusing a bit more on the coursework, I think, because coursework here is important. A lot depends on your coursework. And if you kind of like don't do well in the courses, then you probably will not be able to continue your graduation or move towards your graduation later on. So that's something that you should be a bit more aware of in your first year at least, while also exploring the different professors and their topics. Yep.
So find a system that works for you. For me, it was scheduling a lot, but that might not work for everyone. So finding a good system where you can balance classes, research, normal life is important, and make sure to take enough time for yourself. Our campus is very beautiful. Going on walks, seeing all of the campus. We have a lot of free stuff that we have access to all around Colonial Williamsburg. Take advantage of it all. It's important to not focus too heavily on the work, especially when it gets too hard.
Use the office hours. They post them. They tell you where they're going to be. You can just go ask questions. It's great. That's it.
Yeah, from my side, I think the biggest was like choosing the right advisor wisely, because like at the end, you'll be working and you'll be seeing the advisor throughout your 5 years while you're here, or 6 years, or maybe 7, I don't know. But yeah, that is the most important part, because it's also about your research. It's also about how you communicate with your advisor, and it's also about the relationship you have with the advisor.
My biggest piece of advice is to get in good graces with the ladies in the administration office. All right, we have time for one more question. If there's Dr. Smirny. Do you have Zoom? Yes.
This is just specifically for international students. So how would you rate William Mary and Williamsburg for living, like food, culture, housing, people, weather?
I'm not the best person to answer these questions because I don't really care. I can cook myself. So I have really good cooking skills. If you have a car, initially, I thought William Mary is far away from all kinds of international restaurants and grocery stores. But then I talked to someone from Georgia Tech that told me from Georgia Tech, because that university is in a big city, Atlanta. But if they want to drive to some Chinese store, Chinese grocery, that's always one hour driving because of the traffic. But here it's just half an hour driving. So it has pros and cons. But I'm not the best one to answer this question.
I think no one of us are, because like we all have different perspectives. So for example, when we want to give a rating to William and Mary and Williamsburg, we obviously will compare it to where we come from, right? Because there's no other scale. And I come from one of the most heavily populated country in the world with a very heavy population density. So when I came to Williamsburg, I was like very happy because there is not too many people here and it's very green and lots of trees around. So I always love just walking around the campus, because William and Mary also has like one of the most beautiful campus in the whole USA. So if I'm bored, I'm tired, or just feeling sad because nothing is working as intended, I just take a walk and sometimes sit at the sunken garden, looking at the sky or whatnot. So I think William and Mary, as well as Williamsburg City, is very beautiful. It's very good in terms of living, if you consider that aspect, yes.
And it's like, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I would rate very highly. I think it depends on what your expectations are. So William Mary is a small suburban town, and it's not like city, but it's not far away from city. There is Richmond there. There is Virginia Beach. You can go anytime you want. Food-wise, restaurant-wise, I think there are enough, maybe not too much, but again, you can travel, and it's not that far away. From my side, I was very happy, and I still miss William Mary. So even though I'm currently in New York, having access right in front of you or having access a little bit far away, that's the only difference I see. But otherwise, since you're here for learning and focusing, so I think it makes more sense.
Okay, and that's all the time we have. I would like to thank you for both listening and dealing with the drama. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This is important, because we covered this thing and then actually again, it's about lifestyle and it's like before. But the big part of the lifestyle is like then and how the working conditions and I believe that really when it comes like the graduate student life, I compare myself, like I was a graduate student 30 years ago. And it's very similar actually from whatever I hear you guys talking about. And it seems to be really very, very similar. It has always been the same, I have to say. So the question, the thing that I'd like to say is like maybe it's more of a statement about how the department is. The fact that we are a small department and we do a lot of when it comes like to advising, it's another one-to-one. So and this is really getting a PhD is like it's like an apprenticeship. So this is getting into a small place like William and Mary. It's more like a one-to-one training, which we really people access to. So I got an easy in a small place, and I had like this experience one-to-one. Then I did my postdoc in a big place, and you are you see. And then I was, whoa, it was a very different model. I mean, like the group was really like a small company. It was the professor, a few postdocs, a few recent programmers, and then a higher level graduate students. So getting the one-to-one student professor was very difficult, maybe once a month. Here it's that this doesn't happen. Here it's like every week and sometimes multiple times a week. And that's the way things work. And I think that's the big advantage of William and Mary to the graduate program. And I think actually I contribute to the success of our PhD students to this model. So it was more a statement, not a question.
All right. So thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, guys. And we're going for a break before the poster session. Please don't go yet. Right, we have a great poster session with good talks. So please, enjoy the break and see you at the hallway. For the virtual participants, so please don't go either. So we're gonna have Zoom. So we're gonna record the talks of the posters, and we're gonna post these videos on YouTube. We're gonna send you the link of the video so that you can see the posters. Okay. So we're gonna send that either via email or Zoom. Are we gonna do Zoom as well, or just email? Email. We'll do email. We'll do email. So thank you so much for attending, and great to have you here, and I hope you enjoyed, and please apply. Thank you.